Welcome. This is Gutted. Loaves, fishes, and being more than the sum of your parts. I'm Dr. Stacy Marquis, and today we finish our exploration of Season 2, Episode 1 of The Chosen. Its title, Thunder. Big James and John are not seeking wisdom. They're seeking validation. They want Jesus to pick their side, to name them as right. Underneath all that righteous indignation is something far more childlike. The need to be seen, affirmed, chosen. Jesus turns, saying, "You just couldn't wait, could you?" It isn't a rebuke. It's an observation, a gentle mirror held up to their impatience. They apologize, but without conviction, saying they only wanted to clear up a few things. Jesus knows exactly where this is going, but he opens the door anyway, saying, "By all means." Before the conversation can go any further, a group traveling towards Samaria approaches them. Their leader calls out, "You Jewish boys are far from home." Grace and truth in a single breath, Jesus responds, "Yes, we are. Shalom to you too." But these travelers don't share his peace. With spite, their leader sneers, "Here's our traditional Jewish greeting." Two men, already armed with fruits and vegetables, hurl them their direction. For Big James and John, who are already agitated, primed by resentment, it's the perfect storm. What happens next isn't about just rotten fruit. It's about every prejudice that's been simmering beneath the surface, now finding a target. Both men charge forward, Big James' hand on his knife. But Jesus' arms block their path. His words are calm, but firm. "Don't lift a finger." Venomously, the man sneers. That was a warning. Big James, welcoming the challenge, says, "Try it again. See what happens." With his arms still serving as their blockade, Jesus says, "Quiet, Big James." The group begins to move forward, laughing out loud. The leader turns and says sarcastically, "Shalom to you too," his taunt punctuated by him spitting at them. John, taking a step back, brushes his hand down the front of his clothes, then, looking up, roars, "You filthy dogs!" Jesus' voice cuts through, this time firmer. "I said quiet." The brothers bristle with protective zeal. John pleads for Jesus to let them do something. "And what would that achieve?" Jesus asks. What began as outrage in defense of Jesus quickly mutates into self-righteous fury. Their language turns moralistic, even grandiose. They speak of defending divine honor, even calling down fire from heaven to incinerate the offenders. "Fire," Jesus says, like, did you really just say that out loud? But they don't even catch his tone. They're in too deep. They double down. Yes, fire. Jesus had said just that morning they would one day do greater things. All he needs to do is say the word, and it will happen. Notice the language. It's telling. They're not asking Jesus to do it. They're asking him to let them do it. They want that divine power in their own hands, right here, right now, so they can unleash it as judgment. Big James insists they never should have come here. He knew these people couldn't be trusted. They don't deserve Jesus. Okay, wow, that went downhill really fast. As they stand there, fuming, Jesus takes a deep breath, like he's calculating where to even start with these two. He asks them, why do they think he had them work Melech's field? What was he trying to teach them? Silence follows. The fury beginning to drain is replaced by that awkward quiet that follows being caught in really bad behavior. Big James manages a hesitant guess. To help? For two men who just delivered an emotional tirade about justice and holiness, that's either the most pathetic or most clueless answer imaginable. Apparently, it's cluelessness. Their hatred runs so deep, they can't even fathom a lesson in all of this. Jesus gives them an opportunity to use logical thinking skills. He asks them, do they really think it was just about teaching them to be more helpful or better farmers? They look at each other, then back to Jesus, both shrugging. What follows is a sermon crafted just for them. Jesus' voice stays steady, but carries a controlled intensity. He tells them he was trying to teach them that the seeds they're planting will last for generations. The day before, when they were working the field, Big James quoted Jesus as saying their work would feed generations. I don't know what word Jesus actually used when talking to them, but given his teaching style, he certainly could have said feed with the hope that they would understand his meaning. But I think, at least psychologically, it's more likely that Big James unconsciously changed the word and thus its meaning to fit into their paradigm. It's called a confirmation bias. It's the mind bending new information to reinforce what it already believes. They filtered Jesus' words through their own assumptions about who deserves the harvest. The word feed feels safe, practical, literal. They were sowing in Samaritan soil, but their imaginations never let the people of that soil into the promise. Jesus says it was never about farming. It was about planting truth that would take root in the hearts of people they had already written off. Because of what he told Fotina at the well and what she told others, people were already believing without having witnessed a single miracle. Then Jesus' tone sharpens, the weight of disappointment pressing through every word. They're ready to ruin that growth, he says, because a few people from a region they don't like threw fruit and insulted them. They wanted to scorch an entire field because they'd been bruised by prejudice. That same prejudice they don't even recognize they themselves are displaying. And really, the Samaritans are unworthy? Do they think they're so much better, so much more deserving of grace? The pause that follows is long enough to make the question sting. Well, they're not. That's the whole point. It's why he's there. Big James breaks first, his voice barely holding together as he says he's sorry. John echoes after him softer. I'm sorry, Rabbi. Jesus exhales slowly. His voice softens as he transitions them from correction to repair. As they gather others, he needs them to help show the way, to lead, not by force, but by humility. He shifts them from shame to purpose. He doesn't dismantle their passion. He reframes it. What they've been using to protect and exclude, he now calls to use for service and inclusion. They nod, chastened, still absorbing the weight of what he's asking. But as the silence settles, his expression softens because he knows their zeal isn't wicked. It's just really unrefined. Looking between them, he repeats part of their tirade. You wanted to use the power of God to bring down fire, to burn these people up? If they could disappear into a hole, I think they would. But since that isn't an option, John says, well, it sounds a lot worse when you say it that way. Jesus laughs, a sound that breaks the tension and turns the lesson into something they can live with instead of drown in. Shaking his head, he tells them they're like a storm at sea, thunder exploding out of their chests at every turn. He decides that's what he will call them going forward. James and John, the sons of thunder. John, unsure, asks if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Jesus meets his uncertainty with a half smile that holds both truth and tenderness. Today, he says, it was not a good thing. But then he adds that their passion and intensity aren't flaws to be erased. They're fires to be guided. What once flared in reaction can, with time and humility, become fuel for righteousness. But like any parent gauging what their children can or cannot handle, Jesus says the power he promised them just that morning may need to be delayed or at least given in smaller doses until they calm down a bit. Looking down the road, they see the group approaching, Simon in the lead. As they get closer, Simon says, "They look terrible. What happened?" Jesus answers before they can, saying, James and John needed a reminder that they're in Samaria to plant seeds, not burn bridges. To Simon's credit, he lets that go with no snarky reply. He and the others are there to introduce a guest who wishes to deliver a personal invitation. As the group parts, Matthew introduces the man as Gershon, the high priest of Sychar. Having heard this is their last day in Sychar, he asks if Jesus would do them the honor of reading from the Torah in what he refers to as their humble synagogue. Looking back at James and John, who appear much more humble and settled, Jesus agrees. As the residents of Sychar begin pouring into the small synagogue, Gershon takes Jesus into the Aron Kodesh, the Ark, the area of the synagogue that holds the holy scrolls. Proudly, he presents the scrolls, arranged in proper order. Gershon says he will leave Jesus to make his selection in private. But before he goes, Jesus asks him if he will please send in his disciple John. This is the first time Jesus has referred to any of his followers as a disciple. Disciple isn't a label, it's a role. Something very unique is happening in the relationship between Jesus and John. The curtain parts and John enters hesitantly. Coming to stand beside Jesus, he waits. Jesus says, "The 5 books of Moses are all they have." John's response is heartfelt as he says, "They're missing so much." "Yes," Jesus says, "but they have to start somewhere." And that truth is still relevant today. You can only meet people where they are. To try and do otherwise is not only foolish, but disrespectful. Jesus asks, "What do you think I should read?" John inhales, ready to answer, but Jesus continues. It was really more of a rhetorical question anyway. He begins listing stories. Moses striking the rock instead of talking to it. Balaam beating his donkey in anger. Moses breaking the tablets. The list goes on. Every story carries the same thread. Violent anger taking the place of discernment or patience. By the time Jesus reaches the end, they're both laughing as John says, "I get it. I get it." Only a relationship rooted in trust, honesty, and love can hold a conversation like this. Without that foundation, it would sound like humiliation. Coming from anyone else, it would be shaming. Coming from Jesus, it's refining. He can name John's failures with humor and tenderness because his love has already proven itself safe. As their laughter fades, Jesus grows quiet, then says, he really is open to suggestions for the reading. The playfulness has begun its work. It's broken the tension, drawn John back into connection. But when the space opens again, John's shame rushes in. He drops his gaze, saying, after the last couple of days, he doesn't feel worthy. He's still learning what we all have to learn, that being loved and being deserving were never the same. Jesus sighs and, leaning against John's shoulder, nudges him gently, saying, "Who's worthy of anything?" That shoulder nudge says what words can't. It lifts John out of shame and back into relationship. Still, John struggles as he says, "You, but no man, apparently." Jesus turns toward him, saying, "I am a man, John." John mutters, "And yet," kind of like, "Yeah, but..." Jesus now stands face to face with him. Eyes full of compassion, he says, "I am who I am." For John, that phrase, "I am who I am," is not like hearing abstract poetry. He's hearing the voice of Exodus. It's the name of God, the one revealed to Moses at the burning bush. That phrase would have coursed through him like lightning. And yet, it's being spoken by the same man who just laughed with him, nudged his shoulder, and asked what passage to read. It's the unbelievable collision of the divine and the human. And Jesus doesn't vacillate between the two. He holds both simultaneously. Fully God, fully man. It's almost impossible to conceptualize because it's not meant to be solved. It's meant to be encountered. Outside, Gershon's voice calls through the curtain asking if Jesus has chosen his passage. When there's no answer, Gershon calls in again. John snaps back, "Almost," but quickly softens his tone, giving a gentler response. Turning back to the scrolls, Jesus asks if John has a favorite passage from the first 5 books. John hesitates, then says, Do you?" Jesus smiles. "I don't know. I like them all." John laughs. "You don't say." They exchange a look, and something inside of John is released. He says he has always loved the beginning, how God simply spoke and the world came into being. Jesus recites a line from David's psalm, "By the word of the Lord." John joins in and they complete it together. The heavens were made. John adds that the Greeks use word to describe divine reason, what gives the world form and meaning. Jesus reaches for the first scroll. He likes that, and it's a favorite memory. In the main sanctuary, the townspeople gather. Photina and Neriah enter first. Melech and his family follow. John stands off to the side. Jesus begins to read. "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." John whispers, "In the beginning was the Word." Their voices blend, creator and created, teacher and disciple. Tears stream down John's face. This is the moment that will define his life, the one he'll try to capture years later when he writes, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." For John, the Word became flesh and called him friend. Join me next time when the group grows by 2. Matthew, Mary, and Rama decide to study Torah. Tension continues to build between Simon and Matthew, and those who were sent ahead return with news about Jesus' fame. This is Gutted. Loaves, fishes, and being more than the sum of your parts.